Hey everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful spring. In the spirit of renewal, I wanted to share something new that we've been working on. It's called the Nocturnus Plus, our new subscriber-only feed. With a subscription, you'll get access to the Nocturnus After Hours, a monthly bonus series featuring original conversations between me and our executive producer, Allie Block, along with discounts on our new merch and access to all of our episodes in one place. To give you a taste of what it's like, here's a clip from our very first After Hours episode, where Allie and I talk about the ups and downs of being the doctors in our own families.
It was my first experience where a healthcare provider was sort of using lines on me that I knew. So the biggest thing was he was trying to transfer my dad out of the neuro ICU. And I was trying to argue that he was not ready to go to the floor. And I'm sure you're very familiar with this line. This ICU doc said what we say to patients in the hospital all the time, which is, it's really much safer for your dad to be somewhere else. He could get an infection. He could get a DVT. And I was just like, don't pull that with me. I know those lines.
That's the Nocturnus After Hours. We're really excited to see how this series evolves. It's been really fun so far, and would love to hear your ideas, questions, and suggestions along the way. If you want to join us in this new corner of our community, take a visit to thenocturnus.org/plus. Subscriptions start at just $10 a month. And now, on to today's episode.
At the Nocturnus, we are careful to ensure that all stories comply with healthcare privacy laws. Details may have been changed to ensure patient confidentiality. All views expressed are those of the person speaking and not their employer.
This is The Nocturnus, and I'm Emily Silverman. Today's episode features Dr. Nikki Mittal, a pulmonary and critical care physician. Nikki tells a story from the ICU about caring for a patient who had suffered a devastating brain injury after cardiac arrest, and a family preparing to withdraw life support. At the time, Nikki herself was going through a painful period in her personal life, and after one difficult interaction with the patient's wife, she left the room worried that she had failed in the one part of her job that matters most. But on the day the family gathered to say goodbye, something unexpected happened. Instead of asking Nikki for guidance or reassurance, the family asked if they could pray for her. Nikki originally performed this story at a live Nocturnus satellite storytelling event, produced by the San Bernardino chapter of the California Academy of Family Physicians, with support from the California Healthcare Foundation. In my conversation with Nikki, we talk about the realities of working in the ICU, how physicians navigate conversations about death and dying, and the moments when the usual direction of care shifts. But first, here's a clip from Nikki's live story.
So I'm standing there facing this woman, and she's my height. I'm only 5'2". We start holding hands, and she starts praying. She's Dios, 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 God sent you here, and God tells me you're a very smart person, you're a smart doctor, and you're supposed to be here to help these patients. And as she starts chanting and praying, everyone in the room starts doing their own chanting and praying, and it's not in unison. Everyone is just speaking their own words. And you could kind of feel this whole energy starting to rise up in the room. And I'm trying not to cry. I'm trying to just be present and put out all of my good energy into the universe for this family to have some peace with this moment. And as she keeps praying, all of the other kind of voices in the room drown out. And all I hear is this woman holding my hands, staring into my eyes, and I can just hear very clearly every word she's saying. And as she starts with these generic, you're a good doctor, you're very kind, you're smart, she starts instead to peel me open, seemingly speaking and addressing things that have been weighing down in my heart. I know you're going through a hard time. I know you're walking a very difficult path, and God tells me you're going to be okay. I know the choices you're making right now aren't easy, but you must keep going because it's the right choice, and everything will be okay. And now at this point, I don't know how she knows this about me. I've, of course, been a mess, but every time I'm in this room, I'm holding it together But it feels like she's staring directly into my soul and just picking out all of these things that have just been making me feel like I'm going to collapse at any moment. And she's taking them and she's just giving them wings and making them lighter and addressing them all. And as she keeps talking now, oh, if I was a mess before, you better believe I was a mess now. I have big, ugly tears streaming down my face. I've got snot streaming down my face. I am squeezing her hands. I am shaking. I am trying not to collapse in this moment as like she is just pouring all of this love in her hardest moment onto me. And really, in this moment where I'm supposed to be her support, she's actually just lifting me up.
I am sitting here with Dr. Nikki Mittal. Nikki, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So Nikki, you told a story at one of our Nocturnus satellite shows. So to begin, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about that experience. What was it like to stand on stage and tell your story?
I'm not a stage performer normally, actually, so it was a little bit daunting, but the story was so impactful for me. So I felt very kind of like honored to get to tell it. And then I got to go last. So I got to kind of watch other people go up, which was nice. And then the thing that I didn't really realize until I was standing at the mic was that you can't actually see anyone in the audience, which made it incredibly helpful because it is a very deeply personal story. And I think if I was making eye contact with people in the audience, it would have been it would have thrown me off a little bit more. So it was really cool.
Your story takes place in the ICU, and you are a pulmonary critical care physician?
Yes.
And you're an attending, yes?
Yes.
Tell us, like, how far out are you from fellowship? Where do you practice? What's your practice like? What kind of ICU medicine do you do?
So I did my residency and fellowship at USC in Los Angeles, and I finished in 2015. So at this point of this story, I'm like 9-10 years out. And I've been practicing at the county hospital. I just left that job, but that's where I got my first job out and was for 10 years. And so that was full spectrum ICU and a county population. And I had residents and fellows and a lot of teaching and kind of ran everywhere doing all of it.
And for people listening who are medical students who have never been in an ICU, or maybe somebody who's not in medicine and has been fortunate not to have to ever be in an ICU, can you paint a picture for us? Like, what is the ICU as a space? And as an ICU doctor, tell us a bit about like a typical day or like what it feels like to be at work in the ICU.
So the ICU is, I think, a lot of controlled chaos. Lots of noises, alarms, people, but there's kind of like a rhythm and a control to the whole unit. There's a lot of patients on ventilators, and the ventilator is very rhythmic. There's vent alarms, there's IV pumps beeping. There's just a lot of noise. And then when things are getting hectic for a patient, someone's not doing well, there's just compounded noise on top of noise. But my brain, and I think probably a lot of ICU physicians are kind of ADHD-ish. So, the constant task switching and noise interruptions actually works well for me. It's a place that I definitely thrive. On top of all of the noise, there's a lot of emotion. We see the extremes, of life and death. We see people who are brought back from the brink of death, and there's so much joy and happiness that, this person is better and going to get out of the ICU. And then we see the patients that we know are not going to survive. And so we have to carry a lot of that weight as well with these families. And I think it's actually the patients that aren't going to survive, like addressing those with kindness and compassion, I think is equally as important as all of the other procedures and medications and things that I do. So, being able to help these patients and their families understand what's going to happen. And so it isn't like a ton of bricks falling on them when their loved one passes away, I think is like just so vitally important to the job of an intensivist. So I take that part very seriously.
There's different types of ICUs. So there's medical ICUs, surgical ICUs, neuro ICUs. Do you do mostly medical or only medical?
I do medical, but our medical ICU, we don't have a neuro ICU or cardiac ICU, so it's like a full mixed medical.
Oh, okay. So you see cardiac patients and some neuro patients as well?
Yeah. So we do heart attacks, strokes. We do anything that's kind of coming through that isn't surgical, that's an adult ICU, because I only practice adult medicine, will be in our ICU.
So that's what you meant when you said full spectrum. It's like you're sort of the generalist of the ICU.
Yeah.
So that could be on the medical side, anything from septic shock to, pancreatitis or things like that. On the cardiac side, people in severe heart failure, people having heart attacks. And then on the neuro side, people having strokes, but also people having traumatic brain injuries, brain bleeds, that kind of stuff.
Yep. And then like preeclampsia, eclampsia, anything that's not going to be surgical ICU will come to us.
And these are the sickest patients in the hospital.
Yes.
There's a lot of doctors who would look at that and run as far as they could in the opposite direction. They would rather, be in their outpatient clinic and, that kind of thing. So I'm just wondering, you mentioned a little bit of like thriving on the task switching and things like that, but just curious what drew you to ICU medicine specifically.
I actually, my mom and sister are both family med physicians. And while I didn't think that I wanted to practice like pediatric care, so I kind of veered away from family medicine and I just decided that like adults was where I wanted to settle. So when I went into residency, I went in with the intention of being an outpatient primary care physician with a focus on like LGBTQ and HIV care. That was kind of my niche that I wanted to do. And my first year as an intern, I did a month in the ICU, and it was during swine flu. And there's a lot of young patients coming in and just kind of dying, and I did not understand what was going on. And as I went through it, didn't matter what rotation I was on, it was going to apply myself. So I was trying to do my best, but I was like, this is awful. I hate every minute of this. I need to be done. And I got through it, and I got to do a bunch of procedures, which, again, like that's not what I'm going to do in my life anyways. And then when I switched out, I switched to the next rotation on wards. I was like, this is so weird. I think I have Stockholm syndrome because I kind of miss that. What is going on here? What is this feeling? It doesn't make any sense to me. And then I happened to get another month of ICU as an intern. And at USC, there was only 5 out of the 55 interns that got 2. And it just whatever, the universe was telling me that this is what I needed to do. So I was one of those 5 interns, and now I'd had mostly a year of internship under my belt, right? It was towards the end of my first year. So I had a little bit more of a grasp on what was going on in medicine and my role as a doctor. And then that second month through, I was like, oh, no, this is absolutely for me. I've got to do this. Okay, how do I apply? What do I do to get there? And then the rest is history, I guess they say.
And when people talk about pediatrics, you mentioned peds, they sometimes talk about how you're taking care of the child, but you're also taking care of the parents, of the families, especially when the children are so young that they can't speak or communicate. You're speaking and communicating with their surrogate decision makers, their parents, their family, their caregiver. And so it becomes almost like your patient isn't just your patient becomes like the family unit. And I wonder if you see it that way in ICU medicine as well, because as we know, and as listeners may or may not know, a lot of patients in the ICU do end up intubated and sedated and are, lying on a bed prone and sometimes even paralyzed. Super severe illness could be like that for weeks, and you can't speak with them. And so the only like human who you could really speak to are the people who are coming in to visit and you know, the family and the decision makers. And so I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about what it's like to be in that space. I think it has maybe a bit of a metaphor to the pediatric space in that sense.
I never thought about it like that in relation to the pediatrics, but you're so correct. It is that you aren't treating just the patient. You've got a whole family member. And oftentimes on these patients that I know aren't going to survive, I think like the best thing I can do for them is to take care of their family and to bring their families some peace with the fact that this is not going to be a good outcome. And so it is that like everyone in that room that has love for this patient is also part of my like care plan. What am I going to do to ease this? Because that's the best way as I can in this moment take care of this patient, because I can't fix his stroke or his heart attack or whatever it is. So what I can do to kind of honor him and respect him as a patient is to be kind and let his family understand what's going on so that they aren't racked with like all kinds of, I don't know, guilt and sadness and anger over his passing, at least to the best of my ability.
And these families are often in really different situations. So for example, there could be an elderly person who's chronically ill, who's been ill for a long time, who's been in and out of the hospital for a long time and has been sort of slowly decompensating. And this is a person maybe who's been in the ICU a few times and now they're back in the ICU. And this is kind of like something that the family might be used to on some level. There might be some amount of acceptance in the family or some amount of denial in the family about kind of the illness trajectory of that person, of that patient. But then on the flip side, you might have a family where it's like, my husband was jogging yesterday and then popped an aneurysm in his brain and now he's in a coma and like my entire life just changed overnight. And it's like things kind of fell off a cliff in a way. And so I'm wondering, like, how do you, when you're walking into a room, attuning to where the family is at and how they're processing the illness of their loved one, and obviously there can be really sticky family dynamics. Not everybody in the family agrees with each other. Not everybody in the family agrees with the medical team and the medical decisions. So that is a very different skill set than knowing how to like titrate pressors or how to, you know, execute the perfect extubation. So yeah, how do you think about that skill set? I mean, something that's so important to have in the ICU. It is such a technical and scientific specialty with extremely advanced technology. You know, you've got ECMO machines and, you know, have to understand acid base really well and like PaO2s and all of that. It's very sciencey. Then at the same time, you got to walk in a room and like attune to the family dynamic. It's like, it's very two kind of almost different skill sets that in some ways you might think are rare to coexist in one human. But a lot of ICU doctors have it all. They can do it all. So yeah, just wondering how you think about particularly the more interpersonal and relational aspects of ICU care. It's quite the work to be doing.
You're so kind in the way that you explained it all. I've never really thought about it this way. You are like opening my eyes to all kinds of like aspects of my own career and life. But yeah, I think I have always been an observer. I'm always kind of like watching everything around me, and I'm not a writer, but I'm an observer. And so I think it's just very kind of natural for me to walk around and try to gauge the mood and the sense of the room, in any room, no matter what I'm doing in my life. And so I think part of that has been like self-protective, right? Like I'm a small woman. I've had situations in the past, you know, just like what's going on around me. And so I think that has served me well, because then I walk into a room and I can kind of quickly gauge, where is everyone? Are people getting along? Are people not getting along? And who is what? The other thing that I rely heavily on are the nurses, because the nurses spend a lot of time with the patients and in the room and the family members that come through the room. And they often know a ton of stuff about what's going on. Hey, did you know that he's got a girlfriend and a wife? Or did you know that the son and the daughter aren't friends anymore and they don't get along and they're both angry? Or, you know, the nurses give a lot of information. And so before I ever walk into a room, if I have the chance, I'll stop by with the nurse and just like make sure that I have the up-to-date dynamics. So that always helps a little bit too, walking into these rooms. Sometimes you don't, and sometimes you just walk in, but I always try to kind of get as much recon as I can before I walk in.
Yeah, it's kind of a different way of doing a chart biopsy. Like you go into the electronic chart and you want to learn all about their prior culture data and all that, but doing a quote unquote chart biopsy on like, what's
the social.
The social, yeah.
Yeah.
Is so important. You mentioned the word observer. Have you ever heard of the Enneagram personality test?
No.
I really love personality tests. It's just something that I've always loved. And there's this one personality test called the Enneagram, and there's 9 types.
I'm going to write this down somewhere.
Oh, good. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I think it's type 5 it's actually called the observer. And when you said that, it just made me think about the Enneagram because it's kind of a fun, it's not evidence-based at all, but it's built on spiritual traditions. And I think there's something about the observer phenotype that lends itself really well to medicine in general, but ICU medicine in particular, like that detail-orientedness. I once heard somebody say that ICU medicine is like baseball. It's a game that's won like catch by catch or something. It was a baseball metaphor. And so the idea was in baseball, to win a baseball game, it's actually not about like stepping up to the plate and hitting the grand slam or hitting the home run and these like majestic moments that it's like making sure you always catch the grounder that goes to the shortstop. It's always making sure that you like throw the ball to the first base and, you know, pitching well. And like, it's almost more hygienic was like this way of thinking about it, that it's actually the accumulation of these tiny little moments that make you win the game.
Yeah. It's not just the intubation. It's recognizing when and why and how you can adjust the vent in these little ways to kind of turn them around. And it is like all the little details and all the little moves make the difference, I think. And, that's where my observer nature kind of really comes into handy because I'll be like, that looks a little bit different than before, right? Like, isn't it a little more purple now? Like, I think, yeah.
Totally. Like, oh, we need to suction more today or, you know, and you do that every day for 12 days and it's like, oh, suddenly like they just look a lot better and we didn't really do anything except like suction them. Suction, like the nurse switched and suddenly you have a nurse who's suctioning them much more aggressively and it makes all the difference. Or I don't know, I'm just kind of throwing that out there, but just wanted to throw out some respect to the observer Enneagram phenotype.
Yeah, and I think also in the ICU, just like baseball, it's very much on your team.
Yeah, team sport.
No one thing is done alone. Like there's the RTs, the PTs, the OTs, the nurses, the physician. Like it's just like any good patient outcome I've had has not been on me alone. It's because I've had this incredible team by my side that has like walked with me and listened to the million orders I rattled off in 3 minutes and responded appropriately and like had foresight that this thing was happening and pulled the pressers. Like, you know, lucky to have the team that I get in the ICU.
Tell us about this story. So you're at a place in your life that's challenging. I think you describe in the story you have a new baby and you're leaving a marriage and there's just a lot of stuff for you interpersonally that you're struggling with. But the one thing that you can always lean on, your rock, is that like you're an ICU physician and you're really good at your job. And then you show up to work one day, you inherit this family. There's some last minute changes to their decision making. And there's a little moment of friction with the family where one of the family members approaches you and says, I didn't really like this interaction that we had, or I think the word she said was, you weren't kind, or that wasn't kind. So I'm wondering if you can open up that moment for us a little bit, because, as much as we like to believe that we're perfect, we're not. So what was it like for you to get that negative feedback in that moment, and also like at this moment in your life?
Well, I think at this moment in my life, like especially as an intensivist, it's like I try to control so many things: vents, pressors, meds, family members, emotions, right? All these things I'm like running around trying to control as things are going chaotically. And so it's this place I am in my life where everything is chaotic and I feel like I have zero control over it. And not only do I have zero control, did I cause all of it? So it's really foreign. I'm really out of sorts with my own self. And like, I've spent how long? I'm 43 now, like building this life, and it is just destroyed, seemingly. And while I think it's the right thing that all these things have to end and change, that doesn't make it easier. And is it the right thing? I don't know. I think so. I don't know. It's so difficult. And so I was like, you know what? The only thing I know I'm really good at that I can do well is just be this doctor. So at least let me go to work, let me put these things aside and do good and just focus on the thing that I can do. And so again, I mentioned how important I think it is to have these conversations with compassion and like really be there for the family. And I knew I wasn't performing at my peak here with everything else going on in my life, but I didn't think I was failing. And so when she said to me, like, you weren't kind when you said that to us yesterday, I just like felt this like wave of like nausea wash over me, like, oh, I'm failing everywhere. I'm failing my children by leaving this marriage. I'm failing myself. I'm failing my partner. Like I'm just like failing everywhere. And this thing that I'm not supposed to be failing at, because it is my rock, the thing I know no matter what I am good at, now I'm just failing at that too. Like perfect.
And this was a difficult conversation about end-of-life care that she was referring to.
Yeah. And in my mind, the guy who had signed out to me had already had all of this conversation because they were going to withdraw. And so when I'm having the conversation for the first time, I definitely approached it differently than I did that day, but they had already been there for 5 days and made this decision. So one of those trust but verify things. I should have just started with my gut, kind of where I normally start, instead of assuming some of this stuff had been covered or that they understood what had been covered. And so that was where I wasn't really at my peak performance. I just kind of jumped into the middle instead of starting at the beginning where I normally would. And I wasn't not kind, but it was just a little bit more matter of fact and a little bit less kind of soft on the edges about how I deliver it.
Also speaks to the challenge of handoffs, when someone's been there for 5 days and there's a narrative going and then suddenly the doctor switches out. It's like it's hard to plug right back in, different day, different person. So that's another challenge of this work. Okay, so she says this to you and you have this feeling like, oh God, now I'm failing in every realm. But you keep showing up, obviously. You keep showing up to work. You keep showing up for this patient and for this family, and you're taking care of this person. And ultimately, they do decide to withdraw life support and let the patient die naturally. And one of the family members, I think it's the same one, correct me if I'm wrong, she came up to you and she said, I prayed and I realized that God sent you here to help me come to terms with, to accept my loved one dying. So she changed her mind. What do you think happened?
I don't know, because even that next day and every day thereafter, when I saw her in the room, she didn't give me any extra kindness. She didn't smile. She didn't give me any inclination that she was okay with me. She wasn't mad at me. She was absolutely not mean. She was not rude. She was just very straight and dry. Just that next day, she just said, we're going to withdraw on Sunday. And I said, okay, that the daughter must have gone home and just like explained everything. But like, okay. And I didn't think that it had anything to do with me. So I don't know when she came to this kind of moment of peace with me, the wife. But I'm so grateful she did, because it is one of the greatest impacts a patient's family has had on me. But and even when they all came to the room, I had seen 4 people of this entire family, 2 brothers, a wife, and this one daughter. And they just behind the scenes decided that they were withdrawing. And I had told them, we can do, and I know you guys live very far away from this hospital. I'm sure, your kids are working. We can do an iPad meeting. We can go on Zoom so that they can all ask their questions, because I know a lot's gone on, and it sounds like maybe you guys didn't know what was going on. And she said, no, Wednesday, we're going to withdraw on Sunday. I was like, does anybody have questions for me or want to meet? She said, no, Sunday. Okay. It was just very out of nowhere and very matter of fact. And again, not angry, not particularly sad, just straight matter of fact. It was really strange, I thought.
And it wasn't just, no, we made a decision, we're going to do this on Sunday. It was, no, we made a decision, we're going to do this on Sunday, and God sent you to help me accept this. So what did it feel like to hear that?
I was a little bit happy, because I was like, okay, she doesn't hate me. Maybe I haven't completely failed at my job. And I actually run the critical care course for the UC Riverside School of Medicine med students, their 4th year. And I tell them, when some family has an maybe inappropriate or a reaction that you're not expecting, you should always consider what you did wrong. The natural default, I should have done something different. But if you play through that and you didn't and you were right, then, it's not about you, it's about them. So you can do everything right, but patients cope and patients' families cope with bad news and these heavy things in ways that you can't always control or expect. So when you get something wild, just remember, it's just about their grief and where they are in coping with this process. And as many times as I've told students that, I was just not in a space to even take my own advice. So when she was like, you weren't kind, I wasn't like, oh, I think I was fine. This is not about me, it's about her. I was like, oh my God, I failed. So when she said, oh, God sent you to me to so I could understand and be at peace with this, and that you were going to tell me what was right, I felt very validated. Okay, I'm not a failure at this entire thing that I've spent my whole life building towards, all of med school, all of residency, all these missed holidays, and I'm not failing.
So she says this and you feel a little bit of relief. There's this feeling of, okay, she doesn't hate me, which is a good feeling. But then it goes further and she says, could I pray for you? And not just could I pray for you, but can the family pray for you? And I think you said there was 13 people in the room, 10 people in the room, something like that.
No, there was 13 kids plus their partners plus a few brothers, and it was just probably 25 to 25 people in this small ICU room.
Wow. Okay. And this is
there was chairs, standing room only. There was just people everywhere in this room.
And she says, can we pray for you, doctor? And you say, sure.
Yes, of course. Yes.
And, and you've probably heard that before. I feel like most doctors, you'll have a sweet patient grab your hand and say, can I pray for you, doctor? But there was something else about this. So she starts praying and the rest of the family starts praying. And the way that you described it in the story was really beautiful. You say, they weren't all praying in unison. It's not like they read a prayer out loud and they were all saying the same words out loud. It was different than that. It was this woman was praying in her own way and with her own words, but then all the people in the room were also praying in different ways, different prayers, different words. It was almost 12 or 15 different prayers happening at the same time, but all of them were pointed at you. And these prayers are going on further and further. And then she starts to say some things that feel a little bit like she knows things about you that she shouldn't. So you said in the story, I think, that, please God, let's pray for this doctor. This doctor is going through a hard time. Like, there's no way she could have known that. So she's kind of like piercing into your soul in a way. And she clearly read something off of you about the fact that you were going through something. And so you have all these people, this whole family praying for you and kind of placing that attention on you. And you're standing there. What was that like in that moment to have all that attention placed on you in that way, in a loving way, and also in a way that felt like, ooh, I'm being seen in a way that I didn't expect?
It was really overwhelming. It felt so much like warm, like it was like palpable. I could like feel this like warmth around me and all of these people chanting separately. And whatever they were all saying, I couldn't actually make out any one single sentence outside of what this woman who was like facing me and I'm like looking at her eye to eye is saying. But it was like palpable. It was powerful. It felt enveloping, supportive, loving. And it was like mystifying because she's like, I can tell you're going through a hard time and I can tell you're making hard choices, but the choices you're making are the right choices and you need to keep going. And I'm just like, I'm thinking like, am I hearing this or am I now just like officially going crazy? Like, this is it. I've hit my breaking point and I'm having a nervous breakdown. This is all too much for me, but I think I'm hearing it and I understand Spanish. And the interpreter though is standing like right next to me and she's repeating it in English. So I was like, no, I am hearing everything that I think I'm hearing. Like, I'm not making it up with a bad translation because I'm crazy. She's literally saying all of these things. And yeah, and then I just started crying and she just like there was a question, right? I'm like leaving everything and what else isn't serving me at this moment that I need to clean out of my life? Like, do I need to be here at this job? How is this job serving me relative to now being, a part-time 50% custody parent and I commute very far to this job? And is this the right thing? And am I sacrificing what kind of mother I am because I'm commuting an hour each way to this hospital and I'm working in the ICU, which sometimes is unpredictable hours? And how is that going to impact my children now that I don't have a partner at home to like be there when I'm late? Or, is it going to be a nanny that's going to be with them instead of a partner? And is that make me a bad mother? Or like all of these things. And she was like, you are supposed to be here taking care of these patients. These patients here at this hospital need you and you could be at other hospitals. And it was just like so specific. And I was like, oh my God, can she read my mind? Like, what is going on? Like, how is this happening?
Wow.
It was insane. And then even when I walked out, the interpreter, I really squatted down and just finished ugly crying out at the nurse's station. The interpreter, and I've been at this hospital for 9 years. I know all of the interpreters and I've never seen this interpreter either. And she was very kind. And she goes, honey, are you okay? And I was like, no, I'm not okay. Like, that was so much. And even she was like, I've been in a lot of those and I've never been in anything so powerful. And I'm not sure what she's talking about what you're going through, but I can tell you're going to be okay because you're really special for them to have done that. And you are going to be just fine. And I was like, who are you? And this whole, where did you also come from? Like, this is crazy.
Oh
I've never seen you. This family just did this. I've never seen that interpreter again. I don't know if she just
was she real?
The Sunday that I'm never on, or I don't know what it was. But I know everyone at this hospital. I've been there for so long. And who are you? And how are you also coming and telling me that I'm going to be fine? Because that's something you've never seen before. And so that must mean I did something right.
Did that experience shift your spirituality in any way, shape, or form? I don't know. To me, it sounds like a spiritual experience. And I'm wondering what kind of impact it had on you. I used to be somebody who didn't believe in magic or didn't believe in oracles or messaging coming from the universe. But I've had a few moments where not quite as intense as what you're describing, but you have these moments and sometimes you're like, I don't know, this feels like something from beyond. And so I'm wondering if it shifted how you think about those things.
I don't know how I would describe my spirituality. I believe in signs from the universe. Like, I did not match at my number one program that I was told I was going to match at, right? This is a tale as old as time. And then I ended up at this program and I was crying when I opened up my envelope, and it turned out to be like the best thing for me. And a year and a half later, 2 years later, it's now my number one program for fellowship, and I get to stay there. So I open up this same envelope that says the same program. And a couple years prior, I immediately started bawling. And this time when I get to stay there for fellowship, I'm jumping up and down. And it's this fellowship that I didn't have any idea was going to be on my radar. And I think like that was a sign from the universe that this is the place for me. And like, I do believe in signs from the universe. And so this is just like one more sign from the universe that like, okay, like the days that you doubt yourself, the days that you think you are just ruining everything epically, like it's okay. Keep going. This is right. And it just kind of was at this incredibly low moment personally with everything that was going on. And it really lifted me up and gave me some peace to like just keep marching forward despite what fresh hell I was going to be coming to walk through in this new path, that it was going to be the right path to walk through.
Yeah, I mean, typically people think about doctors helping patients or doctors healing patients, but it's so relational, and the healing flow sometimes moves the other way. It sometimes moves in reverse. And I'm wondering if you have ever thought about that, or if you've seen that a lot in your practice in the ICU in particular, which is such a heightened environment. How do you think about this idea of patients and their families healing the medical team?
Oh, yeah. No, I definitely do. Because I think, you know, there's those patients and their families, and you give them bad news and they immediately turn around and thank you and are so gracious. And I always try to imagine if I'm in their shoes and I'm getting this horrific news about my family member, that like the first 5 thoughts in my head aren't to thank the people taking care of my loved one. And I'm always just like reminded of the kindness of people in that moment and the graciousness. And you know, how many times, especially right after the pandemic, you know, where I'm in a county hospital that doesn't strongly believe in COVID or the vaccine or all these things. And we are in the trenches of COVID, and all I'm doing is getting called all kinds of names by people who just don't believe that their loved one is dying. And so, you know, we deal with a fair amount of abuse, disbelief. Again, some of that is just people not coping with the emotions that they're having to deal with someone dying. I don't think a lot of that's about me. But in the end, I still am there seeing it, and I'm still absorbing people's sadness, right, as I like walk through this journey with them about someone in their life passing away or having this catastrophic injury that's going to change everything. And so there's like really distinct times and patients that I can still think back to and remember where I felt like they impacted me specifically, not at all because of the medicine, right? Lots of cool medicine stuff I've gotten to do, but because of the nature of how they handle things and how they approach me and how they've approached the patient and the situation. And it's just like kind of a masterclass in grace sometimes.
That's beautiful. Well, I think that's a really nice place to end. Anything else you want to share with our audience about your story, about ICU medicine, about storytelling, anything?
No, the storytelling was so fun. Actually, right before I got picked to be on the satellite, I was telling another story about being on a plane to Chicago one day to someone, and this guy was laughing so hard, and he was like, you know, you could be a stand-up comedian. You've got a knack for telling stories. And I was like, huh. And then like next week I get this email that like your story was chosen for, you know, the satellite. And I was like, the sign from the universe. He was warning me, like, I'm going to get this thing that I kind of just tossed out there being like, let's see. So it was a lot of fun. I think just reliving it and being able to share it gave me a renewed sense of peace, and also allowed me to reevaluate everything that I have done and like gone through since that period, and really made me appreciate that family more. And I had actually already written them a thank you letter. I wanted to relay that, like the impact that she made on me, and I'd never really sent it. So this brought me back to just reminding me that I should pay my gratitude to them now a lot later as a thank you for the peace that they gave me.
Well, maybe you can send them this episode if you find a way. In which case, I'll say a word of hello to them and to their family. Well, thank you so much, Nikki, for braving the stage, for participating in our Satellites program, for the courageous work that you do in the ICU, taking care of all that full spectrum critical care medicine, and for coming on the show to speak with me today. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It was lovely.
This episode of The Nocturnist was produced by me and producer and head of story development, Molly Rose Williams. Our executive producer is Allie Block, and Ashley Pettit is our program director. Original theme music was composed by Yosef Monroe, with additional music from Blue Dot Sessions. The Nocturnist is made possible by listeners like you. If you enjoy what you hear and you want to support our work, consider subscribing to The Nocturnist Plus. You'll get access to The Nocturnist After Hours, our monthly bonus series featuring original conversations from our team, along with merch discounts and a full archive of episodes all in one place. Subscriptions start at just $10 a month. Learn more at thenocturnist.org/plus or through the link in the description. Thank you for listening and being part of this community. Until next time, I'm your host, Emily Silverman.